DreAllDay.com.
Now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, especially yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one show. We wrote a book on this subject. We got several books. We got one book with this specific name. And you have this daily masterclass, which is your introduction to everything. If you haven't read the book yet, you got this daily masterclass so you know what the hell is going on. It is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to engage your imagination. How can you get your imagination back firing again? I mean, we all have imagination challenges. Actually, I'll tell you about the challenge in a minute. First of all, let me tell you that I have a text number that many of you are using. Some of you are not. So for those of you who are not, here's the number. It's 305-384-6894. At that text line, there are several things you can do and several things that are going to happen. First of all, you can text the number 3, just the number 3, not the word 3, but the number 3 to that number, and I'll send you a link to get your free copy of my book, The Third Day, The Decision That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. Another thing that happens there is you can text me and tell me the best insight you've gotten from today's masterclass or any other masterclass. And since the shows are every day, you might have great insights you got from 10 episodes in a row. You might wait till you listen to all 10 before you do that. You can text me anytime and ask me, share with me, question me, challenge me on anything that you have heard on this show. Another thing that is going to happen once you get on my text list is I'm going to send you my daily motivation text messages. Every morning you're going to get a daily motivation text straight to your phone from my phone. My number, once again, 305-384-6894. So now that you know about that, first of all, why are we talking about this thing, engaging your imagination? Because actually I should call this re-engage your imagination, because it's not like you never used it before. We all have imagination. As kids, we use our imaginations very vividly, but at early ages, some of us earlier than others, that imagination starts to get beat out of us. We start to be told by the responsible adults around us that these things that we're imagining, these fantasies, these non-realities that we are harboring in our minds are probably not going to happen. And or we actually have some real life experiences where maybe we tell ourselves that these things are not going to happen, and we kind of slowly beat down our own imaginations and we don't use them as often as we used to. So what we're going to talk about here today is how to re-engage that imagination, some practical things that you can start doing right now from the very seat that you're sitting in or the spot that you're standing into. Really bring your imagination back, and you're going to understand why it matters to bring your imagination back. So before we go further, let's get a definition of this word imagination so that we're all working from the same position. Definition is the faculty or action of forming new ideas or images or concepts of external objects not present to the senses, close quote. In other words, your imagination is a way that your mind's eye can see things that are not tangibly in place just yet. So when you hear someone calling themselves a visionary, or you hear somebody saying that they have a vision, or they're trying to bring their vision to life, what they're talking about is their imagination. All right, vision and imagination are the same thing. Vision is seeing something that the human eye cannot see. So that's the difference between vision and sight. Sight is something I can look and see. I can see there's a camera in front of me right now, as you can see by the position that I'm sitting in if you're watching this on video. Vision is me envisioning one of you texting me who hasn't texted me yet and telling me how much you liked this particular episode. That didn't happen yet, but I'm imagining it happening. That's my imagination, but it's the vision that I have. It's the exact same thing. So what imagination is and why it matters is because it is the spark that brings new things to fruition. So anything new that comes about, anything new, whether it's something that you wanted or something that you didn't want, there had to be some type of imagination that made that thing happen. For example, this very episode, I had to have some type of imagination in my mind to even think of, hey, why don't I do an episode on imagination? Well, what's the angle that I'm going to take? And I had to figure out what's the angle and how am I going to talk about this and what am I going to say about it and why is it going to be useful to the people who listen to this show? I had to have some form of imagination to come up with that, some foresight. Is another form of imagination, just like I said, vision. So any new thing that comes about, the clothes that you're wearing, at some point those clothes didn't exist. Somebody had to come up with the idea. The phone that you're using, the people that you know, the job that you have. There were times where these things didn't exist. Somebody had a vision, somebody used their imagination, They created it, they made it into a real thing, and now we can engage with these things. And hopefully when you get new ideas, that leads to an action, that leads to maybe some trial and error. You got to try some things out and see what works. Then you got to deal with the challenges and setbacks that come with bringing these things to life. We call that the third day. And again, send the number 3 as a text to my number 305-384-6894. I'll send you a link to claim your free copy of that book. And then once you get through the 30 days, hopefully you're going to get to some results. And when you get results, you get rewards, such as money, attention, fame, power, respect, admiration, whatever it is, puppy dogs, whatever it is that you prefer. So today we're going to talk about how to get your imagination re-sparked. Because again, as I said, it's not like you don't have it already. You are probably already using it in many ways, maybe some ways that are useful for you, and maybe some ways that are maybe not so fruitful for you and not so resourceful, not so productive for you. For example, if you have anxiety or stress or regret, you are utilizing your imagination. Regret is you utilizing your imagination to bring yourself, who is in the present, back to the past, which already happened. You're using your imagination to send yourself backwards, time traveling, and feeling some negative energy about something that you can't change. Anxiety is doing the exact same thing, except instead of going to the past, you're doing it to the future. You're already feeling some negative energy about something that has not even occurred and may not actually occur. That is a form of imagination. So you can use your imagination in positive ways or negative ways. Today, we're talking about how to re-spark that imagination, hopefully, ideally, for something positive, something that you actually want. Because we all had it as kids very vividly, but that flame sometimes starts to get doused out by the, quote, reality, close quote, of everyday life. Point number 1. Today's topic, once again, is how to re-engage your imagination. Allow yourself to entertain every idea and combination, even those that seem to not make sense. This is the crux right here of really getting your imagination going, is that you must encourage your imagination. You have to encourage your imagination by entertaining every idea that it throws at you, even if the idea is not workable, even if you do not have the tangible resources or intangible resources to make that idea happen, even if you are never actually going to live out what your imagination brings to you, you still entertain it and say, you know what, that's a good idea. I appreciate you bringing it. I appreciate the input from my imagination. Let's think about that a little bit and see how we could make this come together if we did actually make it happen. This is the same way that any of you who are parents, when you have a young child coming to you and sharing with you some things that they came up with through their imagination, I don't think it would be very useful. I'm not a parent and I'm not a child psychologist, but I don't think it'd be very useful to tell your child, well, that's a dumb idea. You'll probably never be able to do that. Or how are you going to do that? You don't have the money. You're not big enough. You're not strong enough. You don't know enough people. You're not from that place. You're a girl. You can't do it. You're a boy. You can't do it. You're black. You're white. If you are telling a young child these things every time they engage their imagination and you're coming up with all the quote unquote adult reasons why that idea is probably not going to work, you're going to beat down that child's imagination so hard that they're going to stop imagining anything. They're going to become an old man or old woman before they even hit puberty. So you probably don't do this with young children. I would assume most of you who are parents, you have sense. You probably don't do this with your kids and didn't do this with your kids. Well, listen, don't do it with yourself. The same way that you would care for that child by nurturing their imagination, nurture your own imagination, even if you're not going to do it. Again, I told you before, when I've done episodes on how I exercise my idea muscle, because some people have wondered and asked me, Dre, how do you come up with new content ideas every day on the show? Because I don't do any run back episodes here on the show. How do I come up with these ideas? Because I exercise my idea muscle. Every day I come up with new ideas and I write them down. Most of the ideas that I come up with, I do not do. Most of them I do not execute on. I come up with ideas for this show that do not get recorded because I decide later on, this is not a workable one, or I don't like this topic, or I don't like the angle that I was going to come at, or I couldn't come up with enough meat to flesh out the episode, so I end up killing it off. That's okay. But I engage my imagination by allowing those ideas. So when an idea comes up, even if it seems like a dumb idea, so to speak, I engage and say, okay, what if I was going to execute on this idea? What if I did want to make this idea happen? How would I do it? What resources would I need? What would be the first step? What would be the second step? What would be the third step? How would I actually do this? Well, this would need to happen, then this, then this. And here's what happens when you start doing that is you're going to make connections that you otherwise would not have made had you done the quote responsible close quote thing and just killed off the idea because you immediately thought of all the reasons why it couldn't work. When I start thinking of, all right, here's this idea that I'm probably not even going to do, but then I start thinking of 5 ways that I can make it work. Let's just do a mind experiment. Let me just think, any idea I come up with, we got to come up with 5 ways that we can make it work. While we're talking about those 5 ways to make it work, here's what happens. Within that 5, I'm going to think of something that I am going to actually do. I'm going to think of a connection that will actually be useful. And let's say I come up with 5 dumb ideas and I come up with 5 ways to make each one of those 5 work. That's 25 steps that I'm coming up with, right? 5 times 5. Out of that 25, maybe 3 or 4 of them, I'm going to come up with some combination or something that I will actually do. But had I not been willing to engage my imagination from the beginning, I never would have came across those 3 or 4 that will actually work. This is why whenever you're in a brainstorming session, whether you're doing it with a group or you're doing it with yourself, you should be instructed that there are no such things as a bad idea. We're not being critical of any idea. We're not editing any ideas. Anything that comes out, we're putting it down on paper, and then we'll go back and be responsible and do all the editing later. But first, let's get all of our ideas out there on paper. Any of you who is a creator, maybe this is the way that you come up with your own ideas. When you do what some people call it mind mapping, or when you're writing a book, or figuring out how you're going to, any of you who does anything like screenplaying, or you create content, or you're, again, working with a group and you're trying to figure out how to solve a problem and no one has a clear answer, you brainstorm. What are all the ways that we could solve this? It might not be what we actually do, but how could we make this work? And we allow every idea. All right? There is no being critical of any idea during this period. And again, you need to do the same thing with yourself. New things emerge from combinations that many people would not dare allow themselves to entertain because they're trying to be responsible adults. All right, sometimes in life you got to stop being the responsible adult, allow yourself to be a kid again, if that's the way that you need to see it, and entertain every idea the same way that a child does. This is the way children's imaginations grow, because their ideas, even though they may be non-plausible, the adults around them still support it and say, hey, well, that's a good idea. Even if they don't do it, I'm glad you came up with the idea. I see that your imagination is working. The biggest way that we grown-ups kill our own imagination is through our need to be realistic. I told you back in episode number 715 that reality is killing you. The way that reality kills you is because of our need to be realistic, and the way that we have socialized this word reality to mean. Usually it means take whatever ambition you have and lower it down, simmer it down, settle it down a little bit, not raising it up. I mean, reality could be raising things up, but most of the time when people say reality, they mean lowering things down. And again, this is just the way that we have been socialized. You can change this, at least with yourself, at any moment you choose. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is how to re-engage your imagination. Seek and find intersections. This is one of the key tools that has allowed me to create as much as I've created, whether it's through books, courses, masterclass episodes of this show, videos that I put out, just topics that I come up with, frameworks that I put together, is my ability to find intersections, find and exploit intersections because I'm looking for them. This is the easiest and also the biggest opportunity hack when it comes to using your imagination. So pay close attention to this point. The process for intersections is very simple. All you're going to do is combine 2 things that you already know about, yet you have not combined together before. That's it. You combine 2 things that either you know about or other people know about, and you make it into something new. I'll give you some examples of this. Blogging plus a limit to how long your blog post can be equals Twitter. That's when Twitter first came out. They called it microblogging. You got 140 characters, now 280. It is basically blogging. Every time you post a blog, it goes up live on the feed, and anyone can see it. The only thing that's different from regular blogging is that you only got 280 characters and it's all on one site. You take something like TiVo, where you could record live TV and watch it back later when you felt like it, and then you combine that with the internet and put it all on a computer. Now you have YouTube. That's the exact same thing. People have recorded material for you to watch, but instead of you having to watch it at 8 p.m. or at 7 o'clock or at 4:30, you can watch it whenever you feel like it. You can just go doing the search, find the thing that you want to watch, and watch it whenever you feel like it. Your favorite YouTuber put a video up 2 days ago, but you didn't have time to watch it until 2 weeks later. Great. All you got to do is pull it up and you can watch it on demand when you feel like it. The only difference between TiVo and YouTube is that YouTube is all on a computer or phone, all through the internet. These are combining 2 new ideas. You take something like radio. Everybody knows what the radio is, right? Even if you don't listen to it. And then you put that on-demand aspect of it with radio. What do? You get what you're listening to right now. You get podcasting, which is the same as the radio, is people talking for the most part. Podcasts, most of them are just audio. There are some video podcasts, and most of them are just audio. And you can pull it up whenever you feel like it. People tell me all the time, Dre, since your show is every day, sometimes I fall behind. Sometimes I'm a month behind. I might be a week behind. I got 10 episodes to catch up on. I got a year of episodes to catch up on. It's all good because the episodes will be there. You know, because it's on demand, you can listen to it whenever you get around to it. You can catch up on 20 of them all at the same time. There's somebody listening to me right now who wasn't listening to me until 3 days ago, and you're binge listening to as many episodes as you can so you can slowly catch up. There are people who say to me all the time, Dre, look, I don't listen to every episode of your show. I look at the titles and I pick and choose which ones I want to listen to based on the topic. It's all on demand. That's all it is. Now with the radio, for those of you old enough to remember the times when we as adults used to actually listen to radio, even kids actually, we used to listen to radio back in the days before you could stream music. If you wanted to hear the new hot song, you had to turn the radio. That was the place to do it. If you missed it, you missed it. All right, there was the evening show that came on probably around 4 o'clock and then, or maybe 6 o'clock, something like that. And if you missed it, you missed it. You had to be there to catch it when it happened right there in the moment. But now our smartphones and the internet have allowed us to have a lot of things more on demand instead of having to be there in the moment when it happens. And there are pluses and minuses with that, but that's the way it works. Here's another combination. You take hustling people, getting people to believe something that may not necessarily be true. Then you combine racial conflict, and then you combine social media. What do? You get Black Lives Matter. All right, we talked about them a few episodes ago. This is a combination. This is what they did. They combined some things that we already knew existed. I talked about them in episode number 1825. Why I do not fuck with Black Lives Matter. They took imagination to come up with Black Lives Matter. They figured out a way to combine some things that already existed, but in a way that was not there before. Again, imagination can be used for something useful or something non-useful. Every new thing that we see in life, is merely an intersection or a remix of existing things that were put together in a new way. The internet in itself is a new combination. Cryptocurrency is a new combination. All you need to do to engage your imagination, or one other way to engage your imagination, is to combine things that already exist. Look at things that you already do. Look at the 10 things that you're most interested in. Let's not even say 10. Let's say the top 5 things that you're interested in, that you spend your time and energy on in your life, and make combinations of those things and imagine, what if you combine them? Just imagine in your mind, just play around with the idea. What if you combine the number 2 thing and the number 3 thing that you're interested in and made a new thing out of those 2 put together? What would you have there? Would it be something unique? Is it something that you can work with? What if you had to come up with 5 ways to make it work? How would you do it? Again, engage your imagination. Allow the dumb ideas to live for a little while before you kill them. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how to re-engage your imagination. Execute. Imagination builds its muscle when it is given the freedom to actually try the wild and crazy ideas that it comes up with. If you want to re-engage your imagination and make it stronger, you can't just wake it up and then put it right back to sleep by saying, okay, I thought about it, now let me go right back to being more serious and more quote unquote realistic. If you really want your imagination muscle to get stronger, come up with some wild, crazy ideas, some things that you may think are not really plausible, and then actually try to make them real. Actually try to make them work out, and let's just see what happens. Let's just find out. All right, there are people who said, all right, we're gonna try to put a community of people living on the moon, or we're gonna go put people on Mars. It hasn't quite happened yet, but people who are willing to engage their imagination in these things, they start thinking, okay, how could I make this happen? If I did have to make it happen, how would I go about doing it? And that's where the ideas come from. And their idea muscle gets stronger, and they get good at solving other things, even if they don't solve that thing, because they were engaging in solving that thing that most other people are too smart and too realistic, so to speak, to go after. If you end up being wrong and the thing that you tried ends up not working, okay, and many times this will happen, so what? All right, you engage your imagination. Your imagination muscle got stronger, even though you didn't necessarily come up with something brand new that absolutely worked. Make your adjustments based on what you learn. Scrap the parts that don't work at all. Take the little pieces that do work and come back with something else. I mean, if you think about something like Twitter, like I said, Twitter was not didn't get started as Twitter. The person who started Twitter didn't wake up one day and say, Eureka, I have this idea where I'm going to take blogging and we're going to put a limit to it and then we're going to call it Twitter and put it out and it was happily ever after. It didn't happen like that. Twitter was initially created as a platform called audio, and audio was meant to be something it was around the concept of podcasting is what it was made for. But then Twitter was like a little side project that was a part of what audio was. And when audio wasn't working the way that it needed to work, they shut that part down and said, okay, this little piece here, maybe there's something in that. They started working on that, put it out, it became Twitter, and now Twitter is what it is. And so that was only maybe 2007, 2008, in many of our lifetimes, depending on your age. That's how it came about. Even a platform like Instagram, I talked about in my book, Work on Your Game, that Instagram first started as an app called Bourbon, which was like a check-in social networking app, kind of like Yelp, where you go somewhere and you check in, hey, I'm at this bar, hey, I'm at this restaurant, hey, I'm at the movies, I'm at Target, and you would check in and you could post pictures and you could get points and stuff for how much you checked in at different places. And the creators shut Bourbon down because it wasn't getting the kind of traction that they wanted to get. But what they noticed was one part of it was getting a lot of traction. It was the part where people posted pictures. There was a feed of pictures you could post. They said, all right, what if we just stripped everything down and just focused on this picture posting thing? How would that go? They did that, cut everything else out. They renamed it Instagram, put it up, and Instagram took off. And now it's one of the most popular social media platforms we have because they were willing to try new things. This is the same thing that you can do. And again, did they create something that was completely brand new? No, the internet already existed. Did pictures exist? Yes, they did. Did selfies exist already? Yes, they did. All they did was combine them together and say, okay, only this, only pictures and the internet. That's it. That's all you can do on this app, and look at Instagram now. Because they were willing to give their imagination some room to breathe. Treat your imagination like you would treat a baby who's learning to walk. You wouldn't shut it down because the baby fell the first 25 times and stood up. Of course not. And treat your imagination the exact same way. Point number 4. Today's topic, once again, is how to re-engage your imagination. The benefits of doing this is that having a strong imagination, an active imagination rather, it keeps your mind young. It keeps you young in the mind. It keeps you young mentally, and it keeps you young spiritually. And it keeps you active in all these ways. Mentally active, spiritually active. You ever come across somebody who doesn't seem, by the number of candles on their cake, they're not really that old, but they're old mentally. They're just spiritually old. It's like it's like cobwebs growing on. It's like almost you can see the cobwebs in their head while you're talking to them and they're 25. How is that? It's because they have killed off their imagination. And have you ever come across someone who is way older than you, maybe twice your age or older, but they seem younger than you or just as young as you? Why is that? Because they have that imagination. They're looking at new things. They're taking in new information. They're engaging with new ideas. Even though they're 75 years old, they're still engaging with new ideas. So their mind stays young and it feels like you're around a young person, even though they might be a lot older than you, because they are staying mentally active. Imagination is a huge part of this. Every new idea you come up with gives you another opportunity to create a new beginning for yourself, whether mentally, physically, spiritually, or any other way. A new way for you to win. Another chance for you to handle a challenge. See episode number number 880 on how to expand your imagination. And I'm also going to refer you to some episodes on ideas, as I referred to earlier. Episode number 1532, what to do when you are fresh out of ideas. Episode number 1479, how to get better at ideas. Episode number 1203, ideas have no owners, only executors. Episode number 897, what you can do with your life if it's not going to be playing sports. Episode number 694, a good idea can come from anywhere, just keep your eyes open. Episode 192, ideas versus execution. Episode number 140, how I produce ideas, since people ask me that often. Let's recap today's class, which is how to engage your imagination, defined as the faculty or action of forming new ideas or images or concepts of external objects not present to the senses. Why do you want to engage your imagination? Because it'll keep your mind young and keep you active. Point number 1, allow yourself to entertain every idea in combination. There are no dumb ideas. New things come from combinations that many wouldn't dare to allow themselves to entertain. Stop trying to be realistic. Reality is killing you. I told you in episode 715. Number 2, seek and find intersections. This is the easiest and also the biggest opportunity when it comes to imagination, because all you are doing is merely taking two things that are very well known and common and combining them in a way that they have never been combined before. The internet, cryptocurrency, podcasting, YouTube. These are all combinations of things that we already know about. Number 3, execute. Imagination gets a stronger muscle when it is given freedom to try the wild, crazy ideas, even if it doesn't work. Treat your imagination like a baby trying to learn how to walk. You don't shut it down because it keeps falling. You let it keep trying. And number 4, the benefits. Imagination keeps you young in the mind, mentally and spiritually active. Every new idea gives you another opportunity to create a new beginning for yourself. See episode number 880 on how to expand your imagination. Send me a text. Tell me the best thing you got from today's class. My number is 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.